As to the comparative ignoring of these leaders of secession by the government, which secession had created, it is often said that the explanation is to be found in a generous as well as politic desire to put in office the moderates and even the conservatives. Davis relatively was a moderate. Stephens was a conservative. Many of the most pronounced opponents of secession were given places in the public service. Toombs, who received the portfolio of state, though a secessionist, was conspicuously a moderate when compared with Rhett and Yancey. The adroit Benjamin, who became Attorney General, had few points in common with the great extremists of Alabama and South Carolina. However, the dictum that the personnel of the new government was a triumph for conservatism over radicalism signifies little. There was a division among Southerners which scarcely any of them had realized except briefly in the premature battle over secession in 1851. It was the division between those who were conscious of the region as a whole and those who were not. Explain it as you will, there was a moment just after the secession movement succeeded when the South seemed to realize itself as a whole, when it turned intuitively to those men who, as time was to demonstrate, shared this realization. For a moment it turned away from those others, however great their part in secession, who lacked this sense of unity. At this point, geography becomes essential. The South fell institutionally into two grand divisions, one with an old and firmly established social order, where consciousness of the locality went back to remote times, another newly settled, where conditions were still fluid, where that sense of the sacredness of local institutions had not yet formed. A typical community of the first-named class was South Carolina. Her people had to a remarkable degree been rendered state-conscious partly by their geographical neighbors and partly by their long and illustrious history, which had been interwoven with great European interest during the colonial era and with great national interest under the Republic. It is possible also that the Huguenots, though few in number, had exercised upon the state a subtle and pervasive influence through their intellectual power and their latent sense of institutions. In South Carolina, too, a wealthy leisure class with a passion for affairs had cultivated enthusiastically that fine art which is the pride of all aristocratic societies, the service of the state, as a profession high and exclusive, free from vulgar taint. In South Carolina, all things conspired to uphold and strengthen the sense of the state as an object of veneration, as something over and above the mere social order, as the sacred embodiment of the ideals of the community. Thus it is fair to say that what has animated the heroic little countries of the old world Switzerland and Serbia and even glorious Belgium, with their passion to remain themselves, animated South Carolina in 1861, just as Serbia was willing to fight to the death rather than merge her identity in the mosaic of the Austrian Empire. So this little American community saw nothing of happiness in any future that did not secure its virtual independence. Typical of the newer order in the South was the community that formed the President of the Confederacy. In the history of Mississippi, previous to the war, there are 6 great names: Jacob Thompson, John A. Quitman, Henry S. Foote, Robert J. Walker, Sergeant S. Prentice, and Jefferson Davis. Not one of them was born in the state. Thompson was born in North Carolina, Quitman in New York, Foote in Virginia, Walker in Pennsylvania, Prentice in Maine, Davis in Kentucky. In 1861, the state was but 44 years old, younger than its most illustrious sons, if this paradox may be permitted. How could they think of it as an entity existing in itself, antedating not only themselves but their traditions, circumscribing them with its all-embracing, indispensable reality? These men spoke the language of states' rights. It is true that in politics, combating the North, they used the political philosophy taught them by South Carolina. But it was a mental weapon in political debate. It was not for them an emotional fact.